Hey there friendos, Newbornkilik here, welcome you back to another awesome gameplay review. You probably read the title and already know why we're here. Voice of Cards Isle of Dragon Roars is an adventure RPG featuring an entire world made up of beautifully drawn cards that represent everything from your party and enemies to the landscape and current objectives. The demo sees 3 heroes of the Ivory Order, Winfred, Berwin, and Hedwin, plus the narrator who's pretty much the dungeon master of all this, and I gotta say, they really nailed it with the voice acting in this one.
The Ivory Order is famous for providing medical supplies throughout the realm, and indeed the wider world.
That man's voice just puts me to sleep almost, and I mean that in a good way. In the demo, the party is tasked with finding the royal treasure, a vial of
a certain liquid.
Okay, that's been stolen by a creature of bones. Various NPCs will help you, such as the alchemist, shopkeeper, innkeeper, and armorer, all of which do exactly what you might expect. There's also the game parlor as well, but the game was kind of a miss for me, if I'm honest. I mean, playing a card game inside of a game made of cards is... I think I might be having a crisis. Along the way, you'll have to find other random NPCs to help with information. Everything pretty much points to the creature made of bone heading west. Eventually, after talking to everyone in town, your party will come to the incredible conclusion that the person who did it was... well, I mean the person who obviously did it. Why is this other guy even an option? Okay, so from here on out, I'm not going to spoil any more of the story in the demo for you, but we're going to head out into the field, talk about some mechanics and combat as well. The field is an incredibly large area with tons of cards to explore. Luckily, we have a very nice fast travel that the game is very clear that it wants us to use. This very convenient fast travel mechanic will allow us to instantly teleport to any area that we've already explored. As you're probably thinking, this is a very nice mechanic which will actually help to remedy my only real issue with the game, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And finally, we are on to the combat. Combat in Voice of Cards is pretty traditional. You and an enemy team both square up and take turns smacking each other. The team with the hardest smacks generally will win. You have your damage smacks, you have your healing smacks, and also your elemental smacks, which may or may not trigger elemental weaknesses within the enemies, or resistances of course. On the bottom left and right of the cards, respectively, you will notice you have smack attack and smack defense. These don't work as you would anticipate, however. I mean, I'm smacking for 9 damage here, and the enemy has a smack defense of 3, and yet I do 7 damage? Which I don't understand. Well, I did go to a public school, so that probably explains it. Realistically, I'm guessing this is only a demo thing to help the player from becoming soft-locked, as there is a rock creature with 50 defense, but I can always do a single point of damage. I'm guessing that this rock creature is probably a late game enemy, and I happen to get pretty unlucky with this encounter, but we managed to defeat it nonetheless with this 1 point of grace damage. Along the left side, you'll notice these crystal-like things called gems that will allow our characters to use stronger attacks. Everyone seems to have kind of a basic attack, but as we see here, the mage actually completely relies on them, whereas the berserker only needs them for his most powerful attacks, as well as Winfred, who would end up actually being the most powerful person on the team. Realistically, she can put out an insane amount of damage. As with these sorts of things, you may anticipate that criticals do exist, and calculating them, they seem to do about 50% more damage. I believe they also ignore enemy defense, but then again, what doesn't in this game? Also got this nice little animation, which is just a nice little fun thing that'll happen whenever you get a crit. After slapping enough enemies, you will inevitably level up, allowing you and your party to gain access to new abilities. I guess I would have to say that everything in this game is pretty standard to the RPG formula. The main difference being that it's all on beautiful cards. I really love the card aesthetic. I mean, all these cards are so wonderfully drawn, and while some of them are better than others, they all have a certain kind of life with movement during the dialogue, which is not something that I was anticipating. The creators of the game really did what they could to make these cards come alive during key story points. It's kind of hard to tell how the story will be on release, so I will leave that until then. The story we got in the demo was okay, honestly, nothing particularly special, just kind of your standard, please go get this for us, we are royalty and you will do as such. However, there is a pretty interesting event in the end that sets up well for the release of the game. There are also some very interesting kind of implications and almost this cult following for the Ivory Order. It feels like everyone here is kind of brainwashed. It's very rare that every single person in a town holds one group to such high regard. It just feels strange to me. I'm guessing that'll be a story point in the final game, but I'm not entirely sure. With that said, a lot of the promotional material also features different characters than the characters we got in the demo. I'm guessing this is probably the tutorial area to kind of introduce everything to us. They gave us these super strong characters, and then in the actual game, we'll have some more reasonably powered parties. Combat in the demo was pretty fun, but honestly quite trivial. Granted, as I said before, this is probably just overpowered characters for the tutorial, or maybe tutorial level enemies. It is pretty common for demos to give you way overpowered characters for that part in the game, just so that you can get through it and get a taste for the game, so I'm not terribly worried about that right now. My main gripe with the demo is that everything is just so slow. As it would turn out, the biggest weakness of this entire demo comes from its biggest strength in my opinion. Everything is a card, there's always cards moving, there's always things happening, and I don't particularly mind when the dialogue and story beats are slow for effect. Even the combat can get away with being a little bit slow because of these pretty neat animations. However, things like shop interfaces and navigating to new areas takes way too long in my opinion. Again, this is a direct result of the aesthetic. Cards are always coming on screen, leaving, or moving, and while it's very charming, you can only input one command at a time, and while the cards are moving, you cannot move again. This leads to the menus feeling quite unresponsive at times, something that will only get worse as you become faster at navigating them. My final opinion on the demo, given the reduced price point at just $30, I would say that it's probably going to be a purchase for me. I absolutely adore this aesthetic, and the story was good enough to keep me hooked for what short amount of time I was playing the demo. The reduced price point really helps me recommend this game, and the Switch is the perfect console for this. If you're going to be playing through a slower style of game, maybe in the car, or on a trip or on a plane or something like that, this is the perfect kind of thing to kill a handful of hours. Which leads me to my final say on Voice of Cards Isle of Dragon Roar's demo version. While I'll definitely be picking up the game, I recommend you download the demo and give it a shot for yourself. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Let me know what you think of Voice of Cards down in the comments below. Thank you so much my patrons, channel members, and Twitch supporters. I'm Newbornkilik, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm out.